Worthless moon base becomes a thriving colony. Earth's elite didn't expect this secret. Part 1. The transport ship shook hard as it entered lunar orbit, held tight to his seat and looked at the 30 other passengers around him. They all had the same tired, defeated look on their faces. None of them wanted to be here. None of them had a choice. Was 42 years old. He had spent 20 years working as a logistics officer for the Terran Directorate, the powerful corporate council that ruled Earth. He had been good at his job. He had believed in the system. Then he discovered that his supervisors were stealing food supplies meant for the poor districts of Seoul. When he reported it, they did not punish the thieves. They punished him. Now he was being sent to Lunar Station Omega-7, a forgotten mining base on the far side of the moon. Everyone on Earth knew what this place really was. It was a dumping ground, a place where the Directorate sent people they wanted to forget. The ship landed with a heavy thud. The doors opened and cold, recycled air rushed in. A tired-looking man in a worn uniform waved them forward. He did not smile. He did not welcome them. He simply pointed toward a long corridor and said one word: "Walk." Walked. The corridor was narrow and the lights flickered. The walls had cracks in them, and he could see where repairs had been made with whatever materials were available. This place was dying. He could feel it in his bones. They entered a large room that might have once been impressive. Now it was just sad. The ceiling was high but stained with age. Old mining equipment sat in corners, covered in dust. About 50 people were already there, waiting. These were the current residents of Omega-7, the forgotten ones. A woman stepped forward. She was perhaps 35, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. She looked at the new arrivals with something that might have been hope or might have been pity. "My name is," she said. "I am the closest thing this base has to a leader, though we do not really have leaders here. We have survivors." She explained the situation in simple terms. The base had been built 60 years ago to mine helium-3 from the lunar soil. For a while, it had been profitable. Then the mines ran dry. The Directorate could have closed the base and brought everyone home. Instead, they found a new use for it. "They send us the troublemakers," said. The people who ask too many questions. The ones who refuse to lie or cheat or steal for them. They send us here and they forget about us." A young woman near raised her hand. She looked barely 25, with a fierce expression that had not yet been beaten down by despair. "I am Park," she said. "I was an engineer at the Shanghai power plant. They wanted me to sign safety reports that were false. When I refused, they sent me here. Is there no way to go back?" Shook her head slowly. "The supply ships come every 3 months. They bring just enough food and air filters to keep us alive. They never bring enough, and they never take anyone back." Felt anger rising in his chest. He had expected punishment. He had not expected a death sentence. The next few days were hard. Learned the truth about life on Omega-7. The food was rationed strictly. The water recycling systems were old and often broke down. The air sometimes tasted wrong. People got sick and there was not enough medicine. Every few months someone died. But he also learned something else. These people, these forgotten exiles, had not given up. They worked together. They shared what little they had. They helped each other without asking for anything in return. It was different from Earth, where everyone fought for themselves. On his 5th day at the base, found him in the common room. She sat down next to him with a serious expression. "Wants to show us something," she said. "Both of us. She says she trusts us." Was surprised. He had only been here for 5 days. Why would she trust me? Almost smiled. "Because you are here. Everyone here is someone who chose to do the right thing instead of the easy thing. That is why the Directorate hates us, and that is why trusts us." They followed through corridors that had not seen before. They went deeper into the base, past areas that were supposed to be sealed. Finally, they reached a heavy door that looked newer than everything around it. Was waiting for them. She looked nervous but also excited. "What I am about to show you must remain secret," she said. "If the Directorate finds out, they will destroy everything we have built." She opened the door. His breath caught in his throat. Behind the door was a large underground chamber, bigger than any room he had seen in the base, and it was filled with something impossible. Green, living green everywhere. Plants growing in rows, reaching toward artificial lights. Vegetables and grains and even small fruit trees. In a place where nothing should grow, there was a garden. Hal whispered, stepped into the chamber with pride in her eyes. "I was an agricultural scientist on Earth. They rejected my research because it threatened the big food corporations. They said my methods were impossible. They were wrong." She knelt down and touched the soil. "I discovered something in the ancient ice at the lunar poles, bacteria that have been sleeping for millions of years. When I combined them with Earth microbes, something amazing happened. They created soil, real, living soil from lunar dust." Walked among the plants with wonder on her face. This could feed everyone on the base. "It already does," said. "We stopped depending on Earth's supplies 2 years ago. We grow our own food now, but that is not the important part." She stood up and faced them both. "The important part is that this technology could end hunger on Earth. The Directorate knows this. That is why they sent me here. They do not want people to be fed. Hungry people are easier to control." Understood now. This was not just a garden. This was hope. This was proof that the Forgotten Ones could build something better than what they had lost. "What do you need from us?" he asked. Smiled for the first time since he had met her. "I need you to help me make this bigger. I need you to help me save everyone on this base. And maybe, someday, I need you to help me save everyone on Earth." Looked at the green plants growing in the dead lunar soil. He thought about his old life, his old beliefs, his old faith in a system that had betrayed him. Then he thought about these people, these survivors, these troublemakers who refused to give up. He nodded slowly. "Tell me what to do." In the forgotten dumping ground of the Terran Directorate, something new was beginning to grow, and the elite of Earth had no idea what was coming. Worthless moon base becomes a thriving colony. Earth's elite didn't expect this secret. Part 2. 3 months passed on lunar station Omega 7. In that time, learned what it meant to truly work for something that mattered. Every day, he woke up before the artificial dawn and went down to the underground farms. Every night, he fell asleep with dirt under his fingernails and hope in his heart. The colony had grown. Not just the farms, but the people too. New exiles arrived on every supply ship, and each one brought new skills and new determination. The Directorate thought they were throwing away garbage. They did not realize they were giving Omega 7 its greatest treasure. Arrived on a cold morning in March. She was a small woman with quick eyes that seemed to notice everything. She had worked as a communications officer for the Directorate, monitoring message traffic between Earth and its various outposts. One day, she intercepted something she was not supposed to see. "They are planning to abandon this base," she told the colony leaders on her first night. "I saw the orders. In 6 months they will stop all supply shipments. They expect everyone here to die." The room went silent. Looked at, then at. He saw fear in their eyes, but also something else, something harder. "Then we have 6 months to become completely independent," said. "We were already heading in that direction. Now we just need to move faster." They divided into teams, led the agricultural expansion, turning every empty tunnel into a new growing space, took charge of engineering, fixing old systems, and building new ones from salvaged parts, handled logistics, making sure resources went where they were needed most. New arrivals joined each team based on their skills. Shin, a mining engineer who had refused to cut corners on worker safety, became essential to the expansion effort. He knew how to dig new chambers without causing collapses. He knew how to find water ice hidden deep in the lunar rock. The people who built this base only scratched the surface, told them one evening. There are resources down there that they never touched. We just need to reach them. He was right. Within weeks, his teams had found new deposits of ice, enough water to supply the colony for years. They found minerals that could be processed into building materials. They found empty caves that nature had carved millions of years ago, perfect for expansion. Came on the next supply ship. She was a doctor who had been exiled for a simple crime. She had treated patients who were not registered in the directorate system, people who officially did not exist, people who the government wanted to pretend were not real. Everyone deserves care, she said simply when she told her story. I could not turn them away. She set up a proper medical bay using equipment that the original miners had left behind. It was old and sometimes unreliable, but in her skilled hands, it was enough. She trained others to help her. She created medicines from the plants in farms. She gave the colony something it had never had before, a future where people did not have to die from simple illnesses. As the weeks passed, something changed in the way people talked about their home. They stopped calling it Omega-7 or the base. They started calling it the colony. They started calling it ours. They built a council to make decisions together. Everyone had a voice. Everyone's opinion mattered. It was so different from Earth, where a handful of wealthy families controlled everything. Here, a former mining worker had the same vote as a former scientist. Here, what you did mattered more than who your parents were. Found himself thinking about this late one night as he walked through the underground farms. The plants had grown so much in just 3 months. Green life filled spaces that had been dead rock. It felt like a miracle. Found him there, standing among the vegetables with a strange look on his face. What are you thinking about? She asked. I am thinking about how wrong I was, he said. I spent 20 years working for the directorate. I believed they were building a better world. I believed the lies they told us. You stopped believing, said. That is why you are here. But I waited so long. How many people suffered while I did nothing? How many people died? Was quiet for a moment. Then she put her hand on his shoulder. We cannot change what we did before. We can only change what we do now. And right now, we are building something good, something the directorate never wanted to exist. She gestured at the plants around them. This is not just food. This is proof. Proof that their way is not the only way. Proof that ordinary people can build something better when they work together. The next morning called an emergency meeting. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. I intercepted another message, she said. The directorate is sending an inspector. His name is, he will arrive in 2 weeks. The room erupted in worried voices. An inspector could see everything. An inspector could report back to Earth. An inspector could end everything they had built. Raised her hand for silence. We have 2 choices. We can show him what we have done and hope he does not report it, or we can hide everything and pretend to be the dying base they expect us to be. If we show him, he will report it, said. The directorate will never allow an independent colony to exist. They will send soldiers. If we hide everything, we might survive the inspection, added. But we will be living in fear forever, always waiting for the next inspector, always hiding who we really are. The council voted. It was not unanimous, but the decision was clear. They would hide. They would pretend. They would buy themselves more time to grow stronger. For the next 2 weeks, they worked harder than ever, not to build, but to conceal. They sealed doors and disguised tunnels. They moved plants into hidden chambers. They practiced looking hungry and hopeless when they were actually well-fed and full of hope. Created fake walls that looked real but could be moved quickly. Built hidden passages that connected the real colony to the decoy areas they would show the inspector. Prepared false reports showing declining food supplies and failing equipment. When Director's ship appeared in the lunar sky, Omega-7 looked exactly like the dying base the Directorate expected to find. The colonists stood in their worn uniforms, their faces carefully arranged into expressions of defeat. But beneath their feet, hidden in tunnels the inspector would never see, green plants reached toward artificial lights. Water flowed through pipes that the official records did not show. Life continued in secret. Watch the inspector's ship descend toward the landing pad. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. The most dangerous 2 days of their lives were about to begin, and everything they had built depended on one simple thing. They had to lie well enough to fool the man who had come to judge them. Worthless moon base becomes a thriving colony. Earth's elite didn't expect this secret, Part 3. Director stepped off his ship like a man who owned everything he saw. He was tall and thin, with hair cut very short and eyes that missed nothing. Behind him walked a young woman carrying a tablet and looking uncomfortable. This was Nam, his assistant. Met them at the landing pad with a carefully practiced expression of tired acceptance. He had been chosen to guide the inspector because he had spent so many years working for the directorate. He knew how to speak their language. "Welcome to Omega 7, he said. "I wish I could say it was good to have visitors, but we both know why you are really here." Smiled thinly. "You are direct. I appreciate that. Yes, I am here to evaluate whether this base should continue to receive supplies. The directorate must make difficult decisions about resource allocation." Nodded and led them into the base. He showed them the main corridors, the common rooms, the old mining equipment. Everything looked old and broken and sad. That was exactly how they wanted it to look. Made notes on her tablet. She seemed bothered by what she was seeing. Several times caught her looking at the colonists with something like sympathy in her eyes. He filed this information away. It might be useful later. The first day passed without problems. Asked many questions about supply levels, equipment status, and population health. Fake reports answered all of them perfectly. Yes, they were struggling. Yes, they were barely surviving. Yes, they were exactly the dying base the directorate expected. That night, the colonists gathered in one of the hidden chambers to compare notes. "He is suspicious," said. "I could see it in his eyes. He knows something is wrong, but he cannot figure out what." "We look too healthy," added. "I try to make people look more tired and thin with makeup, but there is only so much I can do. These people have been eating real food for 2 years. They do not look like they are starving." "We need to be more careful tomorrow," said. "He will look harder, he will ask more questions." Agreed, but something else was on his mind. "The assistant, she seems different from him. I think she does not like what she is seeing." "She is still directorate," warned. "We cannot trust her." "I am not saying we should trust her. I am saying we should watch her. Sometimes people change sides when they see the truth." The second day began badly. Announced that he wanted to see parts of the base that were not on the official tour. He wanted to see the abandoned mining tunnels. His heart raced, but he kept his face calm. "Those tunnels are not safe. They were sealed years ago because of structural problems." "I am willing to take the risk," said. "I want to see everything." They walked toward the tunnels. Sent a secret signal to who was monitoring them through hidden cameras. She would need to make sure they only went into the real abandoned sections, not the hidden farms. For an hour, everything went well. Examined old mining equipment and collapsed passages. He seemed satisfied that there was nothing of interest here. Then he made an unexpected turn. "What is behind that door?" he asked, pointing to a section of wall that looked like all the others. Felt cold. That was one of his fake walls. Behind it was a tunnel that led directly to the underground farms. "Just more collapsed tunnels," he said. "Nothing worth seeing." Walked closer to the wall. He ran his hand along its surface. His eyes narrowed. "This section is newer than the rest. The metal is different." Before could stop him, found the hidden switch. The wall slid open, revealing a short passage. At the end of the passage, green light spilled from an opening. Walked forward, followed, his mind racing. This was disaster. This was the end of everything. But when they reached the opening, they found only a small chamber. Inside were perhaps 20 plants growing under a single light. It was one of the colony's smallest experimental gardens, used for testing new growing techniques. Stared at the plants for a long moment, then he turned to, "You have been growing food in secret." There was no point in lying anymore. "Yes, we have been trying to survive. This is against directorate regulations. All food production must be registered and controlled." Felt something break inside him. All the fear and hiding and pretending suddenly felt too heavy to carry. "Your regulations are designed to keep people weak and dependent," he said. "We were sent here to die. We chose to live instead." Said nothing. He simply looked at the plants, his face unreadable. Behind them had followed into the chamber. Her eyes were wide as she looked at the growing vegetables. "Sir," she said quietly, "this is remarkable. They created a way to grow food on the moon. Do you understand what this means?" "I understand that they have broken the law," said. "They have done what our scientists said was impossible, and they did it with nothing, with garbage equipment and no support. This could change everything." Turned to look at his assistant. Something passed between them, a silent battle that could not fully understand. "Return to the ship," told her. "Prepare my report." Hesitated, for a moment thought she might refuse. Then she nodded and walked away. Looked at one more time. "I will recommend that this base be closed immediately. All personnel will be relocated to processing centers on Earth." Knew what that meant. Processing centers were labor camps. People went in and rarely came out. "You could choose differently," he said. "You could tell them there is nothing here worth closing." "I could, but I will not. Order must be maintained. Rules must be followed. That is how civilization survives." He walked away, leaving alone with the small garden that had betrayed them. That night the colonists met in emergency session. Fear filled the room like a physical presence. Everything they had built was about to be destroyed. Then the door opened and walked in. Everyone froze. She was the enemy. She should not be here. "I disabled the communications on the ship," she said quickly. "Cannot send his report yet, but he will fix it by morning." "Why would you help us?" asked. His eyes filled with tears. "Because I have seen your records. I know who you all are, truth-tellers, good people who refuse to do evil things, and I have seen what you built here, a community, a real community where people take care of each other." She looked around the room at their faces. "On Earth, my mother died because she could not afford medicine that the directorate kept expensive on purpose. I joined them because I thought I could change things from the inside. I was wrong, but now I have a chance to do something real." Stepped forward. "What do you suggest?" "Ship leaves tomorrow at noon. His report says you should be closed down and sent to processing centers, but I have access to his files. I can change them." "Change them to say what?" Smiled for the first time. "To say that this base is worthless, that the people here are too broken to even rebel, that closing it down would cost more than leaving it alone. He will sign it without reading it carefully. He trusts me." It was risky. If discovered, the deception would be punished severely, but it was their only chance. The colonists voted. The decision was unanimous. The next morning, signed his report without looking at it closely. His ship lifted off at noon, carrying a message that would save the colony. And stayed behind, having chosen a new family among the forgotten ones. But she also brought a warning. The directorate would not ignore them forever. Sooner or later, they would have to stop hiding. Sooner or later, they would have to fight. Worthless moon base becomes a thriving colony. Earth's elite didn't expect this secret. Part 4. 6 months after its inspection, the colony had grown beyond anything could have imagined. 300 people now lived in the tunnels beneath the lunar surface. The farms produced more food than they could eat. The water systems ran cleanly. Children played in corridors that had once been silent and dead. They had stopped pretending to be a dying base. They had stopped hiding. It was time to become something more. Had brought valuable information when she defected. She knew how the Directorate communicated, how they made decisions, and most importantly, who on Earth was secretly opposed to their rule. There is a resistance movement, she told the Council one evening. They call themselves the Free Earth Network. Millions of people who share information, protect each other, and wait for the right moment to act. Wait for what? Asked. For hope, for proof that things can be different, for a sign that fighting back is not pointless. Understood immediately, we could be that sign. They began planning in secret, worked to establish communication with the Free Earth Network. It was dangerous work. The Directorate monitored all transmissions from the moon. They had to use codes and hidden frequencies and careful timing. Slowly, they made contact. A woman named Lee became their primary connection on Earth. She led a cell of the resistance in what used to be called Korea. When she heard about the colony, she wept. "You have no idea what this means," she said during one of their encrypted calls. "People here have given up. They think nothing will ever change. When they hear about you, everything will be different." But before they could share their story with Earth, disaster struck. Intercepted a new transmission. Her face went pale as she read it. Reported the gardens after all. He did not trust the official report. He sent a private message to his superiors. They know everything. The room fell silent, gripped the edge of the table, closed his eyes. Even who had risked everything to help them looked defeated. "What are they sending?" asked. "A military fleet, 12 ships, 500 soldiers. Admiral O is in command. They will arrive in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, that was all the time they had left. Called an emergency meeting of the entire colony. 300 people gathered in the largest chamber, the one they used for celebrations and important decisions. Today, it felt like a funeral. He stood before them and told them the truth. The Directorate was coming. They had 3 choices. They could surrender and be sent to processing centers on Earth. They could try to hide and hope the soldiers did not find them, or they could fight. "I will not lie to you," he said. "If we fight, we will probably lose. They have ships and weapons and training. We have nothing but determination, but if we surrender, we lose everything we have built, everything we believe in, everything we are." Stepped forward to stand beside him. "I did not come here to die quietly. I came here because I refuse to let them control me. If I am going to die, I want to die fighting for something real." One by one, others stood up. Soon, the entire room was standing. They voted. It was unanimous they would fight. The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparation. Turned mining equipment into improvised weapons. Converted drilling machines into defensive turrets. They sealed tunnels, created false passages, and prepared traps for any soldiers who tried to enter. But their greatest weapon was not physical. It was information. On the night before the fleet arrived, broadcast a message to Earth. It went out on every frequency, encoded to slip past Directorate sensors, designed to spread through the Free Earth Network like fire. "People of Earth," the message began. "We are the forgotten ones, the exiles, the troublemakers. The Terran Directorate sent us to the moon to die. Instead, we built a new world." The message explained everything. The underground farms, the self-sufficient colony, the democratic council where everyone had a voice. Most importantly, it revealed the Directorate's greatest secret. "We discovered a way to grow food anywhere. In dead soil, in lunar rock, on any planet. This technology could end hunger forever. The Directorate knows this. They have known for years. They suppressed it because hungry people are easier to control." The message ended with a simple request. "Watch the moon tomorrow. Watch what they do to us. and then decide what kind of world you want to live in. On Earth, millions of people received the message. It spread faster than the directorate could stop it. By morning, the whole planet was watching. Admiral O arrived in lunar orbit with his fleet of 12 ships. He was a hard man with a reputation for following orders without question. He had crushed rebellions before. He expected this to be no different. "Attention, Lunar Station Omega-7, he broadcast. "You have 1 hour to surrender. All personnel will exit the base and submit to arrest. Failure to comply will result in immediate military action." Stood in the communication room with the other council members. They had known this moment would come. They had prepared for it. "We need to buy time," said. "The longer this takes, the more people on Earth will see what is happening." Nodded and opened a channel to the fleet. "Admiral O, this is representative of the Lunar Free State. We request direct communication, a conversation between humans, not weapons." There was a long pause. Then O's voice came back, cold and hard. "There is no Lunar Free State. There is only a directorate facility in rebellion. You have 55 minutes. Then I will use those 55 minutes to speak, not just to you, but to everyone listening." Took a deep breath. He knew that his words were being broadcast across the solar system. On Earth, people were watching on hidden screens and shared devices. This was the moment that would decide everything. "Admiral, do you know why we were sent here? Not because we were criminals, not because we were dangerous, because we refused to lie, because we refused to steal, because we refused to let innocent people suffer when we could help them." He told stories of the colonists and why they had been exiled, the engineer who refused to falsify safety reports, the doctor who treated patients the government wanted to ignore, the communications officer who discovered corruption and chose truth over silence. "The directorate calls us troublemakers. We call ourselves human beings, and human beings deserve better than what they have given us." On Earth, crowds began to gather. In Seoul and Shanghai and everywhere else, people came out of their homes and looked up at the sky. They could not see the moon in daylight, but they knew what was happening there. In Admiral O's fleet, something unexpected began to occur. Crew members started asking questions. Why were they attacking a colony of civilians? What had these people really done wrong? Was this the kind of order they wanted to follow? O's voice came over the channel again. This time, it sounded less certain. "You have 30 minutes. Looked at his friends. They had given everything. Now they could only wait. And hope that somewhere, somehow, enough people were listening. Worthless moon base becomes a thriving colony. Earth's elite didn't expect this secret. Part 5. The timer on screen showed 15 minutes remaining. 15 minutes until Admiral O's deadline. 15 minutes until the fleet opened fire on their home. Around him, the colonists had gathered in the deepest chambers. Children held onto their parents. Friends held hands. No one cried. They had all made their choice. They would face whatever came together. Suddenly looked up from her console. Something is happening on Earth. She projected the feeds onto the main screen. What saw took his breath away. In cities across the planet, people were pouring into the streets, millions of them. They carried signs and lights and banners. They chanted words that the cameras could not pick up but that everyone could guess. They were protesting. They were demanding that the directorate stand down. "The Free Earth Network activated everything," said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Every cell, every hidden member, every person who has been waiting for a chance to speak up. They all moved at once." On the screen, saw images from Seoul. The streets were filled with people, more than he had ever seen in one place. They held up lights toward the sky, toward the moon they could not see but knew was there, toward the colony that had given them hope. Grabbed his arm. "Look at the fleet." On the tactical display, something strange was happening. 3 of Admiral O's 12 ships had broken formation. They were moving away from the others, refusing to maintain attack positions. "This is Captain of the vessel Eternal Dawn," a voice crackled over the communication channel. "We will not fire on civilians. We will not be part of this." Another voice followed. "This is Commander Bay of the Starward Hope. We stand with the Moon Colony." Then another and another. Within minutes, 7 of the 12 ships had broken away. Their crews had chosen conscience over orders. Their captains had decided that some commands should not be followed. Admiral O's voice came over the channel. It was no longer cold and hard. It sounded tired, defeated. "What have you done?" Felt tears forming in his eyes, but he kept his voice steady. "We told the truth, Admiral. That is all we ever wanted to do." There was a long silence. On Earth, the protests continued to grow. In orbit, the divided fleet waited for orders that might never come. Finally, O spoke again. I am instructed to negotiate. The Directorate wants to discuss terms." The colonists erupted in cheers, grabbed in a fierce hug, was crying openly. Even, who never showed emotion, had tears running down his weathered face. It took 3 days to work out the agreement. The Directorate tried to save face, tried to maintain some control, but the world was watching. Every attempt to add harsh conditions was met with renewed protests on Earth. In the end, they had no choice. The Lunar Free State was officially recognized as an independent colony. They would govern themselves. They would share their agricultural technology freely with anyone who wanted it, and the Directorate would never again send exiles to the Moon. On the day the agreement was signed, Admiral O requested permission to visit the colony in person. Granted it, curious about what the man wanted. O walked through the underground farms in silence. He touched the plants, looked at the water systems, watched the children playing between the rows of vegetables. His face showed no expression, but his eyes were full of something that might have been wonder. "I have been a soldier for 40 years, he said finally. "I followed orders because I believed order was more important than anything else. I believed that without control, everything would fall apart." He turned to face. "You showed me that I was wrong. You built something here without control, without orders, without anyone telling you what to do, and it works. It works better than anything the Directorate ever created." "Will you stay?" asked. O shook his head. "I am too old to change completely, but I will not forget what I saw here, and I will make sure others remember too." He returned to his ship and left orbit, but true to his word, he spent the rest of his life telling people about the colony. The soldier who had come to destroy them became one of their greatest supporters. 6 months after the agreement, the first volunteer ships arrived from Earth. Not exiles this time. People who chose to come. Scientists who wanted to study bacteria. Engineers who wanted to help expand the colony. Families who wanted to raise their children in a place where democracy was real and everyone mattered. The colony grew. New chambers were carved from the lunar rock. New farms bloomed in tunnels that had been dead for decades. A school was built for the growing number of children. A hospital replaced makeshift medical bay. A great dome was constructed on the surface, filled with trees and grass and a small pond, a place where people could see green growing things under the stars. On Earth, the Directorate still existed, but its power was broken. The technology that had created spread across the planet. Deserts bloomed. Hungry people were fed. The weapon of starvation that had kept billions under control was gone forever. Came to visit the colony 1 year after the revolution. She stood in the great dome looking up at the Earth hanging in the black sky. "When I was young," she said, "I dreamed of changing the world. I thought it would take armies and weapons and great leaders. I did not know that the real revolution would start with a few people growing vegetables in a cave." Smiled. "It started long before that. It started every time someone chose to do the right thing instead of the easy thing. Every time someone refused to lie or cheat or look away from suffering, we just gathered all those moments together and gave them a place to grow. They watched the earth in silence. Somewhere down there in the cities and villages and everywhere in between, people were building a better world. It would take time. It would take work. There would be setbacks and struggles and moments of despair. But the seed had been planted, and like the plants in the lunar soil, it would keep growing toward the light. On the first anniversary of their independence, the colony held a great celebration. There was music and food and dancing in the underground chambers. Children ran between the legs of adults, laughing and playing without a care. In the main agricultural dome, planted a tree. It was the first tree ever to grow on the moon, a small oak that she had nurtured from a seed for months. She placed it in the lunar soil with her own hands, surrounded by the people who had become her family. "This tree will outlive all of us," she said. "Ours will sit in its shade, and they will tell stories about the time when some foolish people decided to grow things in a place where nothing was supposed to grow." Stood beside her, looking at the small tree that represented so much. He thought about his old life, his old job, his old beliefs. He thought about the moment when he chose to tell the truth even though it cost him everything. He had thought he was losing everything that day. He had not known that he was taking the first step toward finding something far more valuable. A home, a purpose, a family of people who refused to give up. The elite of Earth had sent them here to die. They had expected the exiles to fade away, forgotten and worthless. They never expected them to build a world. They never expected them to change everything. They never expected the worthless ones to win. But that is what humans do. They survive. They grow. They reach for the stars even when everyone tells them it is impossible. And sometimes when they work together, they create miracles. The tree swayed gently in the artificial breeze. Above it, through the dome, the stars shone bright and eternal. And on the worthless moon, in the forgotten colony, the future had finally begun.